Good morning, good afternoon, good evening from wherever you're joining me today. I will be talking about build and deploy React Progressive Web App in Firebase. Thank you so much, Geekle, for giving me this opportunity. Thank you so much, Anna and Nick. Once again, I'm glad to be here. Thanks. My name is Deepa. I'm a Google developer expert in web technologies, and I'm also an organizer for GDT San Jose, an ambassador at Women Tech Makers. Fun fact about me is I love coffee. If you're in the San Francisco area, let's meet up for coffee. And here's a QR code that will lead you to all the social handles that I have. And every top right slide would have my LinkedIn handle too. So let's get started with this. Today, the agenda is going to be, I've split it up in two parts. The first part is going to be Progressive Web App. And then we'll move on to React Progressive Web App. We'll talk about how to create a React Progressive Web App using a template. And also we'll focus more on how to make your existing application into a Progressive Web App by adding Service Worker and Manifest. And finally, we'll see how to build and deploy. I have deployed, and there is a live application that is right now converted into a Progressive Web App. So you would see it as a small demo at the end. So some of the prerequisites I expect you to have before we go on in the session is you should know JavaScript in ES6, and you should have developed a web application, at least a vanilla JavaScript one, and you're familiar with IDE, CLI, and it's also nice to have Firebase knowledge too. So to begin with, I just wanted to set the stage as here is a web architecture. It's a three-tier architecture, right? A fundamental rule in a three-tier architecture is the client never communicates directly with the data tier, and it has to go through a communication, right? So it's pretty linear when you take a look at this three-tier architecture, where you have the UI, logic, and then the data. So what are progressive web apps now? These are also web applications which are built with specific technologies and standard patterns so that it makes the user look and feel like it's a native app. So when you create a progressive web app, and if you use it on a mobile or on a desktop, it looks like a native one. So note that I'm referring to a native here and not specifically mobile. So you have a web application. How do you classify them into a progressive web app? I call these as pillars of progressive web app. At the heartbeat, you have something called a service worker, which we'll be talking in a moment. And a progressive web app has to be served in a secure portal, right? So it has to be served on an HTTPS, and it should also be responsive, and it contains something called as app manifest. We'll be talking about service worker and app manifest in this on a very high level, but there's also resources that I can provide you for more in-depth information about progressive web app at the end. So stay tuned. So here is a project folder. And if you see in a regular web application, you would have index.html and some JavaScript files, right? So in a progressive web app, you will also see something called as a manifest file, and then a service worker, which is a JavaScript file. So we talked about the three-tier, where JavaScript, you have your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, which runs on a single thread to render the elements on the page, correct? So JavaScript, interacts with the DOM API. However, a service worker runs as a separate thread. It does not interact with the DOM API, and it can manage single or multiple pages. It can listen to ongoing requests, fetch them, and cache the responses, and load when the user goes offline, right? So understand that it acts as a network proxy. So how do you, okay, so you say that you created a serviceworker.js. What do? You have it as a file, but how do you use it inside your application? As you would write a function in your app.js saying that, hey, if you find a service worker file, then register it, right? There is a function called as register, and then it's a service worker is basically an API. So you use it, and then once it finds there is a service worker file in there, it gets registered on the browser. So what are the features of service worker? Like I said before, it can load offline. It can load content offline. It can enable push notifications, and it listens to fetch API requests and by constant background sync. So here is when you have a service worker in your application. So if you go and open Chrome DevTools, and inside the Applications tab, you would see something called as a service worker under the sidebar here under Applications, and you would also see it contains something called a source. It picks up the service worker file, and it also has something called a status, which says activated and running. And then it also has push, sync, and periodic sync and update cycle. Understand that service worker goes through a life cycle, and each time when the user goes and does something, the content gets synced, and then it gets registered, and the life cycle basically changes. It has certain life cycles, such as here it's mentioned install, wait, and activate. So there is a life cycle that goes on with service worker, which I have talked in detail in one other video that I can point out to as a resource at the end. And understand that the caching also happens here. So now let's move on to the next pillar, which is the app manifest, which is nothing but a JSON file. And it tells the browser about how progressive web app should behave when the user installs the application, right? It has to say it is a key value pair. It's very similar to your package.json file. It has some name, it has a name, it has icons, it has a description, etc. So here is a visual for that. And here is a theme color, icons, name, and background color that we have. And we also have this as inside the manifest. And if you see here, it's got it gets the icons from the source, and what is the type of the icons. It is a PNG, and what is the sizing. And it gives a lot of other information as well. Once you have the manifest .json, you should make sure that you link them into your web inside your HTML file. I'll be showing it in the demo as well. So now, what does progressive web app solve ideally, right? Why are we even talking about progressive web app, right? Here are the steps that you would do if you have a native app. First off, you would go to a store and you open the store app. Then you would try to find the app, and then download and wait. And once it gets installed, you would have to accept permissions and then use the app. So these are the different steps that you'll perform to use a native application, right? Whereas in a progressive web app, there's only two options that you have. One, you don't want to install it because it's already a progressive web app. You just open it in your browser inside your native device that you're using, be it desktop or mobile. You just click the URL and you start using the app. So that's one way. Otherwise, if you want to install it, there is an install option that's available when you click on the URL. And once you install it, you use it as a native app. So how simple is that, right? So here's an example of Google Photos app. And then if you see in the browser, I have the screenshot from a desktop browser. So if you see, there is an install button here. And then when you click on here, it'll pop up this dialog saying that, hey, do you want to install? So another example on a mobile device is Tinder application on a mobile browser. It has an address bar at the top, and then in the middle is your native app without no address bar. You just have the login information. And if you have it as a progressive web app, you have the address bar, and also you find something in the bottom of this app saying that, hey, do you want to add Tinder to your home screen? Basically, you're creating a bookmark and you're just having it on your device's home screen. So, and not only Tinder, many applications use that. Starbucks, Flipkart, Alibaba, and a lot more applications are moving into progressive web app. So now, okay, you created a web application, and once you have created, how do you know that if it is really a progressive web app, right? There is a tool for that called Lighthouse. Lighthouse is a Chrome extension which you can install it you can add on to your Chrome browser. And once you do that, once you run an audit on this page, it checks for basically, it goes through a checklist of items, and it checks whether the application that you have built is installable, and whether it meets all the requirements, as you can see here. And it also sees whether it's optimized for a progressive web app. For example, it says, hey, it has registered for the service worker, it has a manifest with a maskable icon and things like that. So once you do that and the check passes, you get this green tick mark at the top. So if it has any errors, it'll show up here. And if you click onto this drop down, it'll lead you to what and how you have to fix it too. So now we have the progressive web app architecture, which is very similar to your regular web application, but then it goes through a service worker, which runs as a separate thread, and there's a constant background sync that goes on, right? So every technology has benefits and drawbacks. Some of the pros of progressive web apps are it costs less to develop and maintain. Any web developer can now build a native application using their JavaScript skills, and there's no need for you to submit your application to the App Store. Submit and wait for it. God forbid if it gets approved, your app can be installable by many users. And note that you have to go through this process every single time when you try to update your application too. So once you do an update, you have to again resubmit it to the store, right? So this is not there in progressive web app. So that's one of the major highlights for this, and you don't have to pay for any stores. And there's a study that is being done. There's a lot of higher engagement when people started converting their application into progressive web app, and also there is user engagement too. So these are some of the pros of converting your web application into progressive web app. And like I said, every technology comes with its own drawback. Understand that this technology is not supported by all browsers or platforms. There are specific browsers that are supported. For example, Chrome is supported for Android and Windows, device, etc. But then mainly there are there's a lack of support on Safari and Firefox, which makes it difficult for different users, right? Target users. And it also takes some time to adapt. People have been using native apps for so long, so it takes time to adapt. So the next thing is the background sync that I was talking about, because it constantly syncs, the service worker syncs your content. What happens is that your battery life can go down. However, there is a workaround on this. There are two APIs that are available. One is the background sync, and then one is background fetch. So background sync, you can limit your content to be cached, And then if you want to load more content, you can use Fetch API where you can attach it to CDN. There are workarounds, and then you can pull your content based off of that. So these are the cons. So far, we talked about progressive web app. Now let's move on to React, part of this session. So as we all know, React is the most popular JavaScript library. It's highly efficient because it's component-based. It's fast. People can develop applications faster. It's flexible, and there is a humongous support on the community as well. So these are some of the React benefits that we already know. Now, so how do we create a progressive web app in React, right? There are two ways that you can create. There is a NPM template package that is available. Through that, if you do that, it gives you a template already to begin with. If you are a first-time user trying to build something, if you want to quickly mock up something and see, you can use this. However, if you already have an application and you want to add service worker and manifest file to it, there's this way also. So we'll be talking about both, and mainly focusing on the second one. So like I said, you have a package called as Create React Application Template, PWA. It's a mouthful. CRA is Create React Application Template for PWA. There's a package to it. You add this when you create it. You use Create React App, and then you give the app name, and you use this template. Once you do that, once you say, and then you do npm start, it comes with a out of the box. It has service worker, it has service worker registration. As you can see, in the manifest, you have all these, the name is there, short name, icons, like I showed before, right? So it comes as out of the box. And once you do that, once you run npm start, you would see it in the local host. You would have this installable icon, and you can, when you click install, it would install. So this is something that you can use it to try. So the next one is we would be creating our own, right? So here's an application, weather application. We'll be building, and we'll be using Open Weather API. And I have built this, and then I've tried to test it locally as well as after hosting. So it did pass all the PWA checklist. So this is what we'll be building. And it also supports offline. So when the user, if you go to Chrome DevTools inside of Service Worker, when you check on this offline checkbox, it'll show up offline content saying that, hey, you're offline. It'll be available once you come back online. So this is also, we'll be doing this. So here is what you would do. You have to, when you create a React application, you would have a source file where you will see app.js, index.js, etc. And you create inside the public folder, you would already have, you can create your own app manifest. So here I've created a manifest file, and also note that there's only index.html inside the public folder. And I have some images, and this is something that I have added on to my project. So let's move on to the service worker. So we talked about the service worker lifecycle, remember? So I'm just going to quickly skim through this so that you understand. First off, we are trying to create a, we wanted to install the service worker, right? And note that the registration one, it goes into your index.html. So we will have to write either inside a script tag. I think I added this inside the index.html as a script tag for registering it. Once you register it, After that, it installs, right? So it'll listen for, I'm using an add event listener where it opens and it gets the cache. So once, what are the things that are, caching? It gets it from this offline.html file, right? It listens to it, it fetches it, and then if it matches, it checks whether if it matches with the offline .html. If it is not, it updates it. So it fetches it and then it also activates it. So basically it goes through all this registration, installation, fetching, and then once it fetches, it gets activated. So understand that this is the life cycle that we talked about earlier in a very high level. So once you do that, here we have, this is a very important step that you need to do, is to run build. So once you do that, you build the whole application, and inside the build folder, you would have index.html. This is what, if you see, there's no index.html inside your source folder. It's only in the public, but then we still need to take our React code from app.javascript, and then we also need to put it together along with this index.html, right? So for that, we need to build it. So we build the application. Once we build, we have the build folder with all these, index.html, we have the manifest file, we have the service worker, etc. So this is a very important step that you need to do. Once you do it, you're almost there. We have to go now, build and deploy it. We have already built it. We have to deploy it in Firebase. So inside of Firebase, there are a lot of tutorials available. Just go through the GUI part of it. Try to set up a project first. And once you have set it up, it will go through all these steps for you. But we are not going to use any of this Firebase configuration because we are just going to host it, right? So once you do it, just once you create a project, if you go on the left-hand side, it'll show build, and there will be something called as hosting. Click on to the hosting, and then it'll show you on the right-hand side to get started. Click on the get started button here. And then these are the steps that you need to do. So one thing that I wanted to specify here is once you have to install the Firebase CLI. Once you do that, you log in your command line, and then you do Firebase init. And before you once you say deploy, it's going to ask you which folder, and make sure that you do all these steps inside of your project project folder, root folder, and you have to say specifically, it will ask you, do you want to build this? Don't say build, just say, I want to use the build folder here, and then say no to other things, because it will rewrite URLs if you index.html if you say yes. So we have already built it, so you just have to say that you have to pick up not the public directory, but the build directory. Once you do that, you say Firebase deploy. Once you're done, we have the application here, which I'll be showing it in a moment. Here is the demo that I wanted to show for the application that I've hosted in Firebase. Here's the application. As you can see, there is an install icon at the top here on the browser where you can install. This is a weather application that I created. So if I go ahead and it picks up the information from Open Weather. So if I give Austin, it does show the weather at Austin in Celsius. And if I go and check the dev tools here, and as you can see, there is a manifest, there is an icon here, which is what you would see it as a favicon at the top left here on the tab. And inside the service worker, as you can see, this one is installed and it's activated and running. If you go to the console, it says that registered successfully as well. And if you see inside the cached storage, you would also see an index.html and offline.html. Now let's go ahead and run this and see whether it passes audit, right? That's the whole idea about this. So let's change it to mobile, and then because we built this as a web app. I don't know whether you saw that real quick. Minute it showed the offline message, but it'll also show up here. See, it does show for an offline message too. As you can see, it passes, it is installable, it is optimized for PWA, and it does pass the check. So this is something that I wanted to really quickly show on this demo. So let's move on to what we had here, right? So here is okay. So I have some resources provided for you for progressive web app here in the left. If you click onto this, it'll take you to my YouTube video where you can learn more about, if you're new to a progressive web app, you can learn more about it on this video. And I also have a bunch of blogs about Project Fugu and progressive web app. Project Fugu is Google's project, which deals with a lot of progressive web app APIs. So I have a bunch of blogs about it. You can go read about it as well. So where you go to the next level is if you are new to progressive web app, but you're familiar with React, you can start working on server-side rendering, real-time data, and you can also connect it to Firebase real-time database too, and try to use APIs in progressive web apps such as payment, notification, geolocation, etc. And you can also try to see how you can automate service worker and use advanced APIs too. So the possibilities and the learnings are more. And this technology is going, I know it is getting very popular these days. And there is a code labs that I've provided the link with here. You can take a look at it too. And with that said, my name is Deepa. You can connect me with the social handles that is there in the LinkedIn Linktree QR code. And thank you so much for your time. And if you have any questions, let me know.